morning, West Ham fans. Russ and the West Ham Network. Hope you are all safe and well. It's Thursday, and it's Graham Potter press conference day. Does that work? Bit all excited about that one, but obviously, it could, in theory, be Graham's last press conference as a West Ham manager, according to reports. Anton spoke yesterday on Hammer's Headlines from a senior source, but obviously not the senior source, because the senior source is not talking to anybody. There's a media blackout for the senior source. So this senior source is how senior is the senior source. That sounds like it's tongue twisters. But according to reports, it is last chance saloon for Graham Potter in the game on Saturday. A poor result for the Hammers against undefeated Crystal Palace, who we haven't beaten at London Stadium for ages, could mean or would mean that he would be relieved of his duties at West Ham. And unlike, according to, as Anton said, according to the source, it will not be a prolonged affair like it has been under previous managers. You know, how many times was David Moyes one game away from losing his job? Do you know what I mean? So the only issue for me is what happens if we have a good result. Would the Everton game be the must win? And then if we have a good result to Everton, would the Arsenal game be the must? You know, when does it stop? And I think that's always the issue with me with these types of ultimatums they put out. Is I remember we always used to have a save our season game, you know, and they would. I remember Upton Park, they would publicise it. This was a save our season game, and we draw it. And it's like, well, what does that do? Nothing. You know, it's just like there's no difference here, and that's what worries me when these types of things come out, because you're thinking realistically, you know, the chances are when, you know, I said Palace are undefeated this season, we're bloody awful this season. The chances are it's going to be a defeat anyway. So anything other than a defeat will be a welcome surprise. But that would obviously mean that Graham is there until the Everton game, and then a poor result then. Does he lose his job then? You know, it doesn't help anyone really. But there's are a lot of parallels between this, where we are now, and where we were last season, really, under Lopetegui, in terms of as sort of the pressure mounts, names start appearing of people who want the job. You know, we know Mourinho's out of the race. I didn't think he was ever going to be a genuine candidate, in all honesty. We've got Nuno. There's we know Steve Cooper won't be because he's now he's at Bromby. Brendan Rodgers will always be named, but obviously it's Celtic. You have to buy his contract out, so that will never happen. We know Kieran McKenna was apparently at the game as a bequest of one of the directors invited him there. I don't know. I think it's more of a Tottenham connection thing, because he obviously used to manage Tottenham, didn't he? And another name that has come up, and actually this was one of the ones that was under Steidten. And in fact, you look at the guys that Steidten really wanted. You had, or we're led to believe, Hans Flick, who's now absolutely smashing it in Barcelona at the moment, having a really good time there. And another one was Roger Schmidt. Now, good news for West Ham, he's been out of work for over a year. So it worked well with the last one, with Potter, isn't it really? But he's been out of work for over a year. He's managed something like 800 games, over 800 games, and got about a 60% win ratio. Germany, Austria, China, Netherlands, Portugal. He was at Benfica. He was he won the league and cup double for Red Bull Salzburg. He's won cups of PSV. He was the first German manager to win the Premier League for Benfica. But apparently a move to the Premier League appeals to Roger. Yet reports also suggest he's being linked with the Chinese national job. But what you're going to see is a lot of these types of names. I mean, he's 58. You know, he's been known to have, you know, his style is high intensity, attacking football, all the right words when it comes to West Ham. But how does that translate? That's always the issue for me. You know, and there's going to be loads of names coming up, of managers. It's going to be just like, and even if Potter does win against Palace with that ultimatum, the right, you know, it's like the famed, you know, what's it called, vote of confidence. That's what it seems, and it's a shame because I genuinely wanted Potter to succeed, and it just hasn't. Nothing's worked. You know, it's a similar thing to 𝗤𝗏𝗪𝗧𝗧. You know, I didn't see enough. You know, I saw glimpses. I saw a good 20-minute spell here. I mean, even that Forest game where we talked about this season, that wasn't from beginning to end you know, we controlled the game hardly. And in fact, if Chris would have put that goal in right at the start of the second half, it might have made a very different story. In fact, you probably saw more under 𝗤𝗏𝗪𝗧𝗧. You know, there was that game against Newcastle, that one game where literally it was the perfect game. And I just think, you know, that on top of everything else, this news coincides with the meeting, the minutes from the meeting from the supporters associations and the club. They came out and didn't really say anything, in my opinion. It was very matter of fact. This was answered. This question, there was no answers to the questions. It was like it was almost like these are the points, and then the board have gone, or the club have gone, right, okay, we're going to feed back on these points, and that was it. I don't know why it took so long. Why it took 6 days to write out half a sheet of A4. Really, that's what it was. And then the club put out a really strange statement as well around 7 o'clock on Wednesday evening to say, you know, basically putting not all their dirty laundry out into an official statement, but basically say, look, we're listening to you, but this is what we do, this is what we do, this is what we're doing, this is what we're doing. It's like, well, I think you're adding fuel to the fire. I don't really understand it personally, but someone must have thought it was a good idea. But obviously with the protest start on Saturday, Crystal Palace game, and as I said, you know, I said before, if you're going and you're protesting, do it peacefully. You know, don't be a dick, and don't sort of kick off or anything like that. You know, it's almost like hurting them with kindness. I remember one. It was some management training. It was either it might be when I was at Pizza Hut or something like that when I was a kid, and the trainer said to me, if someone's angry, all you do is talk really, really quietly and softly spoken, because that cuts through more than ranting and, you know, ramping it up. And it's I think it's true. Anyway, just my opinion. It's my opinion. You might not agree with me, but sometimes if you're calm, collected, the point comes across easier than if you're angry. And I know you are angry, but sometimes it's about just the way it goes, because any trouble or anything like that that's going to happen is going to reflect badly on the West Ham fans. And if you're protesting, you're representing West Ham as well. So us as a fan base. So and similarly, the ones, you know, it's going to be a strange atmosphere on Saturday because people will be protesting and then we're going in to watch the game. So it's going to be a really strange atmosphere. Weird cauldron of noise, I think it will be. And if Crystal Palace are clever, they'll just capitalise on it, go out, try and get an early goal, and the crowd will turn them and the crowd will fuck off. Because it will do, because they'll all be angst up having done the protest and stuff as well. So, and then that could mean the curtains for Potter. Honestly, it's like it's crazy how everything is at the moment when it comes to West Ham. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens to Graham Potter press, because and again, I think in terms of the Potter press conference today, you'll get a feeling of how much pressure, because last week, for a couple of weeks, he was a bit narky, a bit snappy with his responses. And then last week, he was all sweetness and smiles after the Forest game. Now, obviously, having lost 3-0 to our league rivals, Spurs, an absolutely appalling game, I think it'll be snappy again. And also with then all the noise about him, it's been his, you know, and I hope one of the journalists ask him that question, you know, about the media, and see what, and his response will be interesting. He'll palm it off. He'll play it with a straight bat, but still. Anyway, we'll bring that, as well as I think we've got an opposition review, opposition chat this afternoon at lunchtime. I think it's on today. So keep an eye on the channel, subscribe. had a lovely conversation yesterday with a subscriber who's going to be hopefully sorting out our burger alarm, and he said he finds it difficult to. He watches it and he finds it difficult to subscribe because he hasn't got an account for YouTube. So we might do a little, not an idiot's guide, but I might see if we can do a little video just to show, because it's not just for us. He said, I watch Geo and Gonzo and I don't subscribe to their channel. I feel really bad because they asked me to subscribe and I know what I've got to do is press the button, but I haven't got an account and I haven't got. We'll see if we can put something together to sort of help you guys out. And yeah, take care, everyone. Stay safe, stay warm, stay humble, keep the faith, and come on, you bloody irons. Much love. Bye-bye.